So hi everyone, thank you for joining us. Just the quick um, sort of safety briefing, as it were, although there is no safety briefing. But the cameras are all turned off on purpose because we're actually recording this webinar. So I hope that's okay with everyone. And so we've kept the cameras off for that reason. If you have any questions for Anna, please do pop them in the chat. I'll be monitoring that as we go through, as will Fergus, I believe, and we will be able to ask questions on your behalf at the end. Which just leaves me to welcome Anna, who's kindly offered to present to us this morning. I think that Cochrane Cloud's like one of her passions, a bit of one of her babies, and I'm excited to see more and hear more about the project. So yeah, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat, and I'll hand over to Anna now to start. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Lizzie. That's great. Yes, I do think of Cochrane Crowd as one of my children. All right, I'm going to share my screen now, so hopefully this will be a fairly smooth transition. And in a moment, I'll just ask if you can see my screen okay.
Absolutely, yep.
Brilliant. So hopefully it's in presentation mode. Great. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. Yep, I'm Anna Noel-Storr. I'm an information specialist, aka librarian by background. And I'm going to talk today about an initiative that a small team of us started just over 10 years ago now, which is called Cochrane Crowd. So I'm going to structure this webinar like this. I'm going to first of all just start with a very brief introduction around what is evidence synthesis and what is Cochrane, before then looking in more detail at what is Cochrane Crowd and how it works, and of course how you can join it should you wish to do so. So starting with evidence synthesis, and sadly it's not to be confused with Dave and his synthesizing. Evidence synthesis usually starts with a question. And this question could be something like, does aerobic exercise improve cognition in people with mild cognitive impairment? And to answer the question, we need to find the evidence. We need to find the individual studies that have been done that look at aerobic exercise for mild cognitive impairment. And research studies can come in lots of different shapes and sizes. Some will be more relevant than others. Some will be better quality than others. And we need to factor all that in to our evidence synthesis process. And then once we've identified and assessed our sort of set of relevant studies, that's when we need to do the synthesis part, where the results of each study are combined statistically, if possible, to give us an answer to our question. And I rather like this little animation. I hope that's showing okay, but essentially it's showing the identification of those studies popped into the evidence synthesis machine. And then each line, as you see coming out the end here, represents one of those studies. And then at the bottom, a diamond is produced. And this is actually the Cochrane logo, where, as I say, each study is represented by a line. And then at the bottom, you've got the combination of the results of those studies. And depending on where that diamond sits, whether to the left or the right of the line, indicates whether or not the treatment has an effect or not. So producing evidence synthesis isn't easy, and we face some significant challenges. And one of the challenges relates to the vast and growing amount of research produced. And this is me buried under all of the research produced, with over 4,000 health-related research articles produced each week. And this makes it really difficult to keep up and find the evidence we need when we need it. And that's problematic for sort of two reasons, really. The first is that if we can't find the evidence quickly and easily, then important questions about the effects of treatment remain unanswered. But also, even once a question has been answered, that evidence base might continue to grow, and we might want to update the evidence synthesis or the review that we're producing. And the longer it takes to update an evidence synthesis, the more likely it is that the conclusions in the sort of current version are going out of date and are actually inaccurate. So we know producing reliable, high-quality evidence synthesis is hard, but the good thing is that many of the tasks involved in producing an evidence synthesis or a systematic review are very rule-driven and systematic and can be broken down into a micro format that can then be potentially shared out to people willing to do them. And this is a sort of model of contribution called crowdsourcing. And so on Valentine's Day, over 10 years ago now, we launched a project that would go on to become Cochrane Crowd. And essentially, Cochrane Crowd is an online platform that hosts tasks related to identifying and describing health research. Most of the tasks are about helping to identify a particular type of research or a particular type of study. And what we can see on the screen here is one of the tasks that's, in fact, our oldest and longest running task that we have on Cochrane Crowd. And the aim of this task is to identify a particular type of research or a particular type of experiment called a randomized controlled trial, or RCT for short. And you can see on one side of the record, you have a title and a summary or an abstract. And you can see that there are some highlighted words there as well, which are just some inbuilt highlights we have in the system that just help to structure the abstract that's on the screen. So point out where the methods begins and where the results are, and some yellow highlights, which just help to hopefully help the contributor to make a decision about whether the record is describing a randomized controlled trial or not. On the other side, we have the answer panel or the answer options. So if you think the record is describing a randomized controlled trial, you would click the button that says RCT. If you think it isn't describing an RCT, you would just click the reject button. And once you click one of those two answer options, the next record then appears and off you go again. Of course, if you're not sure whether you think the record is describing an RCT or not, you can always skip the record, and pressing that button just moves you on straight away to the next record. It might be that there just wasn't enough information to make a decision. It might be that it's just you're very new to the task still and want to just make sure you look at records that you feel more confident about. Whatever reason, you can just skip a record. And of course, lots of people who do join Cochrane Crowd are very new to health research. So each task is supported by an interactive, brief training module, which you have to complete before you can progress to the live task. And each task also has what we call a quick reference guide, which is accessible from within the task itself. It's just a link, you can click it, and it opens up a new window that just runs through the ins and outs of the task at hand. And as well as tasks, over the years, Cochrane Crowd, we've developed on Cochrane Crowd lots of what we call bite-sized micro-learning modules, which cover a range of topics related to health research and evidence synthesis. So we have learning modules that cover, for example, key concepts in health research, understanding different study designs, and we have some that cover the topic of health equity and lots more besides. But I do think one thing that I'm often asked by people is, what if I make a mistake? So as well as training and learning modules that hopefully help people get familiar and understand the task at hand, we also use agreement algorithms that help ensure what we call collective accuracy. So this just essentially means that no record is looked at by just one person. And in fact, most of the tasks on Cochrane Crowd require a certain number of agreeing classifications made in a consecutive order for that record then to automatically receive its final classification. So for example, if 4 people independently of each other all say in a consecutive order that this record is describing a randomized controlled trial, that record will automatically receive a final classification of randomized controlled trial. And our evaluation of this algorithm has shown that in 99% of cases, it's the correct final classification. It doesn't get it right 100% of the time. I don't think any system is perfect. We also have some slightly more in-depth tasks on Cochrane Crowd. This is a screenshot from our task, which we call PICO extract. And PICO stands for population, intervention, comparator, and outcome. And the aim of this task is for the contributor to extract more details about the study. So who were the participants? What was the intervention or treatment being studied? And all of this helps us to find the evidence more easily when we need it. So in Cochrane Crowd, as well as diving into tasks and learning activities, you can also track your activity and progress. So this is just a screenshot from my dashboard, and it shows things like when I signed up to Cochrane Crowd, which was obviously on the 14th of February, 2014. It tells me the number of tasks I have contributed to so far on the platform, 79. It tells me how many badges I've earned, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. And it tells me how many challenges I've participated in, because every week we run a crowd challenge where we invite all crowd contributors to come online at the same time and take part in the same task just for an hour or two. And so one thing I do get asked a lot as well is kind of what do I get out of it? And I think, hopefully part of this is just knowing that you are actually making a significant difference to helping us identify the evidence we need in order to conduct evidence synthesis. But as well as that, there are some fun elements on Cochrane Crowd. You can earn digital badges as you progress in the platform. You can see here a purple badge, which is the most prestigious badge you can earn on the platform. This badge is a combination of progress in terms of the amount that you've done on Cochrane Crowd combined with an accuracy measure as well. So it's fantastic. And once you have earned a purple badge for a task, that means you get converted to an expert in the platform. And when you're an expert, your decisions actually carry more weight in that agreement algorithm that I talked about earlier. There are plenty of challenges that we run that people can take part in on Cochrane Crowd. And there are different types of tasks in Cochrane Crowd. So we have tasks that are long-term mainstream tasks that help to feed our repositories of studies. And those are fantastic, very important repositories. We also have tasks that are specifically linked to certain reviews that we're producing. And people can take part in those tasks as well. And what they can do is earn named acknowledgement in those publications when they are complete. And as I've touched on earlier, there's also plenty of opportunity for learning within the platform. One area that we're really trying to develop further in Cochrane Crowd is to really enable people to focus on certain health topics of interest to them. I think a lot of people do come to Cochrane Crowd with a particular interest in a certain healthcare area, whether it's neonatal, dementia, diabetes, anything like that. So what we've done is actually developed some unique topic-based URLs. So these are just entry points to Cochrane Crowd where if you go in through one of these URLs, for example, the one at the bottom here, crowd.cochrane.org/neonatal, then the records that you will see will be hopefully on that topic. There will be other records as well, but those records will be prioritized for you to see. And so to date, we've had over 36,000 people join Cochrane Crowd from 195 countries. And this amazing community has helped to amass over 10 million individual classifications or 10 million individual decisions on records, which has helped us to identify hundreds of thousands of studies of relevance to us. But another thing I do get asked a lot of the time, well, but who is the Cochrane Crowd community? And in 2020, when we launched the latest version of the platform, we included some sign-up questions. They're completely voluntary, you don't have to do them, but over 99% of people who do sign up do complete them, which is really helpful because it does help us to understand who our crowd are. And one of the questions is just around how old are you? And you can see here that a sizable chunk of our crowd are actually pretty young, so aged between 17 and 24 years old. Another question that we ask is around what your highest level of education is. And it's interesting to note here that we do also attract a very educated crowd, with 33% holding a postgraduate degree. But that said, we also do have a similar sort of proportion of people who have just completed school. We also ask whether or not people know what a systematic review is or what evidence synthesis is when they join. And a sizable proportion, 36%, do know what a systematic review is. We have, in fact, some, 18%, who've actually helped to produce one. But then interestingly, we also have 16% who are completely new to it. They don't know what it is. And then, do you have much health research experience is the other question that we ask. And interestingly, 37% are completely new to health research when they join. So I guess just the final part really is just to sort of describe how you can join if you might want to. You just have to go to crowd.cochrane.org and then click on the sign up button. You do have to have a Cochrane account to join. That's what the sign up is. It takes about 1 or 2 minutes to create one. It's free. You will have to go into your email to verify your email address. But then apart from that, you're all set. You could then just go straight to Cochrane Crowd and log in. And what you will see here, you'll get taken to your dashboard. And this is just a screenshot from the dashboard. And then from this point, you can just click Start to dive into some of those tasks that I've just described today. If you want a bit more of a structured pathway through Crowd and be given certain tasks to do in a certain order, you can sign up for one of our pathways. We have a newcomer pathway or a student pathway. And then, of course, there's plenty of standalone learning opportunities as well, as I've described. And I think that's all the talking from me at this point. So I'll hand it back to Lizzie just to see if there have been any questions at all. My email address is just on the screen here as well. So if anything occurs to you after this webinar, please do feel free to just drop me a line.
So we don't have any questions in the chat at the moment. So if you have questions, Franna, please feel free to either pop them in the chat or mute yourself. Maybe pop your hand up with the reaction thing if you can. I have a question, Anna. It's fascinating and really good presentation. Thank you. How did you advertise your like when you started? How did you advertise it, and do you still advertise it now to get new people on board? If you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, well, I think as with a lot of these things, we kind of we're lucky, right place, right time, really. So because Cochrane is quite well known
Mm.
already, we and has a huge network of people who have been in some way involved in Cochrane. We were able to kind of initially start um, advertising, I guess, for want of a better word, that Cochrane Crowd existed to those existing networks. So we kind of went out to them, and that was really useful because it meant we started with a crowd that was already quite knowledgeable, quite savvy about what evidence synthesis was and why it was important, which gave us a chance to really test things carefully and slowly, but with the knowledge that this was already quite a savvy crowd. And I think over the years, we've attracted more and more people who are completely new to health research, hence why we've put quite a lot of effort into creating micro learning and hopefully helpful training modules within the platform itself, so that it really can be somewhere that people can start their journey in terms of understanding evidence-based medicine and getting involved in health research. And nowadays we just advertise in various different ways. Sometimes we will, next month, for example, is Citizen Science Month. We'll be running several kind of events, if you like, online on the platform, which we will sort of advertise through our various social media channels and things like that.
Awesome, thank you. So they've got a question. How much concordance do you see across tasks, and are there particular tasks where that's more variable?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So with the task that I showed earlier, that is it an RCT? Is it a randomized controlled trial task? We see a high level of concordance there, around 10 to 15% of records that get assessed by the crowd need resolving. So by that, around sort of 10-15% of records don't receive that 4 consecutive agreeing classifications. There's a break in that consecutive chain. And when a break occurs, what happens is the record gets taken out of that workflow and enters a new one. And that new workflow means that a resolver level crowd contributor has to resolve that disagreeing classification. Now, other tasks, there's a much higher proportion of records that need resolving. And it really depends on 2 things. It depends on the difficulty of the task in the first place. And one really, I would say, probably one of our most challenging tasks is identifying diagnostic test accuracy studies. I think it's just, I think it's tricky for multiple reasons, partly the reporting of those studies, partly because there can be multiple different study designs. But I think another really important aspect, and it's one that we sometimes don't get right, is it is all about how you frame the task itself, how you frame the question. And sometimes we've probably asked too much, and it really has not made it a doable task. So it can be a bit of trial and error in terms of the framing of the task itself. And if we have really bad sort of discordance, if we have a very high proportion that need to be resolved, say up to 50%, then we'll look again and see what we can do to either make the task clearer or consider a slightly different task. Are we trying to ask for decisions on several different factors all in one question? Can we break that down actually into a more micro format?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something we do keep a close eye on.
Cool. Does anyone else have any questions? Wow. Thank you, Anna. That's been really, really
No
informative.
problem.
And I'm quite keen to have a look and maybe sign up myself and just
Please do.
it's a bit like oh, here we are. Um, is there a way for participants to record their input to bolster their CVs? So, like if you wanted to say I'm part
Absolutely.
of the Cochrane Crowd, is that a
Yeah, yeah.
downloadable thing?
That is another very good question. I should have included that in the presentation. So, yeah, once you've signed up, you can track your progress and you can download a report of what you've done on Cochrane Crowd, which kind of breaks it down. And as I say, for some of the tasks, you can also, you can get an accuracy assigned to that.
Mhm.
Um, and so absolutely, yeah, you can keep and download a track record of your progress. Also, great if you can get involved in some of those tasks on Cochrane Crowd that are directly linked to specific evidence syntheses or specific Cochrane reviews, because then you can earn named acknowledgement in those reviews as well. And that's another thing that you can then cite on your CV. Yeah.
Yeah. So Joe's just asked, this is a volunteer-based thing across the board. Are there any time-paid opportunities if things turn to be more time-consuming?
At the moment, the whole of Cochrane Crowd is completely volunteer based, except the only exception to that is that some of the resolvers are core members of my team.
Right.
So, and sometimes, and that's a requirement really, so that we can make sure that we really are keeping up with the records that do need resolving. And sometimes, as I say, they can be quite challenging tasks. So you need a sort of a certain level of domain expertise
Mm.
sometimes to make the decision. Also, with some records that need resolving, we have to go to the lengths of getting the full text and assessing them at full text as
Yeah.
well to make a decision. But no, at the moment, it's entirely volunteer based in terms of the sort of the normal level of contributor and the expert level of contributor. Yeah.
Yeah, Anna's mentioned it's a great way to encourage junior researchers, and I agree.
Mm.
I'm wondering if there's a space for this sort of presentation to go into undergraduate or postgraduate, just like awareness thing. So if you want to have a go and see what evidence synthesis is about, go and have play.
I agree. I mean, I
Um,
think it's, yeah,
I think that'd be fab for, for me a year ago when I was doing my master's,
yeah.
this would have been really informative and useful.
I think that's probably why we do attract a huge number of, quite young people who I presume are many of whom are students.
Mm.
And one thing that I haven't talked about today, but because it probably forms the subject of another webinar potentially, is something called Cochrane Classmate, which is a sister platform to this. It only works because of Cochrane Crowd, so you can't use Classmate without Crowd. But Classmate essentially enables teachers, trainers, educators to use Cochrane Crowd for their students. So you go into Classmate, you select one of the crowd tasks that you want to use, or you can select multiple crowd tasks that you want to use. You invite your students via the Classmate platform, and then they get an invitation to go to Cochrane Crowd and do the task. And then the teacher or the trainer can then monitor their class's activity, see how well they're doing, see whether they've actually done it, and things like, and download a report. And you can put your class into teams and things like that if you wanted to have a bit of a competitive element to it, or a gamify it a little bit. But yes, Classmate is a platform that has been designed for teachers to be able to use the Cochrane Crowd platform for their students.
It's fascinating. Thank you.
Problem.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So I'm hoping lots of people will go and have a look and
Please do.
get some clicks going for you.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you
Thank you
very
very much. If
much.
anybody's got any questions, like Anna said, she's got her email address on the slide there. So give you a couple more seconds to note that down, and then we'll say goodbye. Thank you very
Yeah,
much for
thank you.
coming.
Yeah, thanks everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure.